And without further ado, I will get started. So welcome to Food as Medicine. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This event is presented by the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County in partnership with the Mosher Foundation. I'm Juliana Madrigal, your host and the Development Coordinator at the Food Bank. Today's topic is eating for balanced blood sugar. And today's presenters, Randy and Vibeke Weiland, are going to share some incredibly useful information with you about how to do it, why to do it, and the different ways you might feel better when you're doing it. As you will hear from them today, balancing your blood sugar is not only foundational for creating good health, but it plays a pivotal role in reducing your risk of so many chronic diseases. Before I introduce our speakers, here are a few housekeeping items. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat feature on Zoom, and we'll address all the questions at the end. We'll have a couple of interactive polls during the session, and we'd love for all of you to participate and engage. And you'll also have access to this webinar recording and previous sessions on the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County YouTube channel. Additionally, you will receive a follow-up email with links to our Zoom recording and an educational handout created by our guest speakers. And finally, your feedback is very valuable to us, so please share your thoughts on this presentation and suggest topics for future sessions. You will automatically receive a survey after the Zoom concludes, where we would love to hear your feedback. Now, I'd like to introduce our two speakers. Vibeke Weiland, a retired nutritional therapy practitioner with a master's degree in psychology and who currently serves on the board for the Food Bank. And Randy Miller, a certified functional nutrition counselor and integrative health coach, and they both currently serve on the Food Bank's education committee. We are grateful to have their dedicated work featured in our program today. Now I hand it over to our presenters, and please enjoy the events.
Well, welcome everybody. We're so happy you're here today. And by the time this presentation is done, you're going to have a new lens to look through when it comes to making food and lifestyle choices. And you'll understand why those choices are important in terms of how you feel every single day and in terms of lowering your risk for chronic disease. As always, one big disclaimer before we get started. We are not doctors. Everything we say today is meant purely as education and information and not as medical advice. So as always, we strongly encourage you to discuss any and all of what we say today with your doctor. Another reminder, we're going to talk about many different foods today, but of course, everyone is unique. And if there's any food you don't tolerate well or that your healthcare provider has said to avoid, then please follow their instructions. And as we mentioned earlier, no need to take notes today. We created a handout that contains the full summary of everything we'll talk about, plus tips and tricks, which will be emailed to you right after the presentation. And also the video replay will be posted by the Food Bank afterwards. All right, so let's dive in. Let's start with the basics. What is blood sugar? So blood sugar refers to the amount of sugar in your blood at any given moment, almost all of which comes from your food. So why do you even need sugar in your blood? Well, because sugar, or glucose, is the main fuel your cells use to make the energy they need to do their jobs. So when we talk about blood sugar management, we're referring to how efficient your body is at converting the sugar you eat into the energy your body and brain need to function. And by the way, today we're going to use the words blood sugar and blood glucose interchangeably. So let's take a look at a graph on this next slide and get a better understanding of what I mean when we say how efficiently your body handles the glucose or the sugar you eat. So our bodies work best when our blood sugar levels stay within a very specific range. And in this chart, that range is represented by those green horizontal dotted lines. So your body does well when you stay on that blue gently rolling curve, the one that you see between those green dotted lines. That ideal zone is between 70 milligrams per deciliter of blood at the bottom and 140 milligrams per deciliter of blood at the top. So that means if you took a measurement of your blood sugar at any moment in time, Ideally, you'd get a number between 70 and 140. Now, your body doesn't do well when your sugars get too high or too low, like the red and orange lines you see here that are spiking really high and then plummeting low, above and below that green zone. So then the question is, well, how do we do it? How do we achieve that blue rolling curve? How do we stay in the ideal zone? The food answer is protein, fat, and fiber, or as we like to say, PFF. So when we eat a meal that contains a mix of protein, fat, and fiber, our blood sugar curve tends to stay within the optimal range, like the wave you see here on this slide. So why is that? Well, it's because protein, fat, and fiber slow down the rate at which sugar is absorbed into your bloodstream. So just to give you a little metaphor here, think of protein, fat, and fiber as huge semi-trucks on a highway that block traffic. And think of sugar as these little Fiats or Mini Coopers that are trying to pass and get ahead because they want to rush into your bloodstream, but they can't because the trucks are blocking them or slowing them down. So PFF, or protein, fat, and fiber, slow down the sugary traffic, and that gives us a slow, even sugar drip over time rather than a giant dump of sugar all at once that would create a significant spike above that line, out of that optimal range we showed you on the previous graph. So,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Was there a question?
Nope.
No. Okay. So now that you know protein, fat, and fiber, why would you care? Why do you care if your blood sugar gets out of range? What is the big deal? You can't feel it. Seems all right. Well, if your blood sugar is swinging wildly up and down in the short term, you're likely to experience some uncomfortable symptoms. Things like the ones you see on this list right here. So you might have sugar cravings, you might get headaches or even migraines. You might feel fatigued, particularly in the afternoons. Low or uneven energy, like those afternoon crashes. Maybe you find yourself reaching for something sweet or an extra cup of coffee. You might be cranky or feel a little shaky. Maybe you have a hard time focusing. You might experience weight gain. You might even experience some insomnia, waking up in the middle of the night and then not being able to fall back asleep. Maybe you're one of those people that has a hard time going more than 2 or 3 hours without eating, and any unevenness in energy throughout the day. So if any of these things, if you find yourself relating to them, we would recommend that you look into your blood sugar volatility, and that is exactly what we're going to show you how to do today. Before we get into the how, though, here's a little bit more why, and this is the long-term why. In the long term, the stakes actually get higher. Research has shown that in terms of disease, all of the diseases that you see on this slide have a relationship with chronically high blood sugar. And that by managing your blood sugar so that it stays in that optimal range that Randy talked about, you can actually reduce your risk of all of these diseases. So, and you can see them here. We'll just quickly cover a few. We're talking about everything from cancer to dementia to mood disorders like depression and anxiety, cardiovascular disease, hormone imbalances, and of course the obvious ones that we know relate to blood sugar like insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So this slide for us is kind of a big reason why everyone should care about managing their blood sugar. You can see how foundational it is to health. When your blood sugar is not in balance, meaning that it's swinging too high and crashing too low, or maybe staying chronically high over extended periods of time, it's just really hard to be healthy. So now that we've got you motivated, how would you know if blood sugar is an issue for you? Well, first, symptoms like the ones I already talked about, things like the cravings, irritability, fatigue. These symptoms can mean your blood sugar is on that roller coaster, and it's during the low drops that you tend to feel those kinds of symptoms, and our little kitty on the left is definitely feeling some symptoms right now. But the second kind of big category of ways to know is through different kinds of blood testing. And today we have multiple ways to do this. We're showing them here. You could go to a lab. Your doctor can draw up a blood test order for you. Requisition, that's the word. You go get a blood test at a lab, or you can use a good old-fashioned home glucose monitor or glucometer. Or now there is a newer continuous glucose monitor, also known as a biosensor, and we're going to get into that one a little more later. But first, let's talk about the lab blood draws. When your doctor sends you to a lab for blood work, here are some markers that you can check to see how you're doing. And we're not going to explain them, in depth for the sake of time, but these markers are all defined in your packet. And if you're interested, you can read them and ask your doctor. There's actually several more markers in your packet too. It's pretty comprehensive. Here's some basic ones though. So there's a marker called hemoglobin A1C. We want that number at 5.6% or lower. So if your A1C is above 5.6, you would be considered either pre-diabetic or diabetic, depending on how high that number actually is. Fasting glucose, you want it below 100. And so anything above 100, right after you wake up and before you eat breakfast, so you're fasted, that would be considered high. We highly recommend asking for a fasting insulin level. That's not included in a normal glucose panel, but it's a good one to ask for. We'd want to see it at less than 25, but ideally, you'd actually want to bring it down to 10 or below. So if yours is above 25, it is considered high, but again, 10 or below is even better. And then there are triglycerides, which if they are above 150 are considered high. And again, we have normal and we have optimal. Optimal would actually be below 100. Now, the downsides of relying on a doctor's blood draw are that they don't happen that often. Typically, you only do one a year unless you and your doctor are actively monitoring something. And they only give you a momentary snapshot in time. So they're not showing you patterns necessarily. And for a lot of people, getting a needle stuck in your arm and having blood taken out is deeply unpleasant. Now, the upside of a doctor's blood draw is that you can get lots of things measured, not just glucose-related things. So you do get a more rounded picture of what's going on in your body. And so we definitely recommend you get them. We don't want to discourage you from that. Okay, back to this slide. We've covered the first two, symptoms, blood draws. The last two blood draw methods are things you can do yourself at home. No doctor, no lab visit, just do it at home. If you're the kind of person who likes to see objective data, you can now easily just measure your blood sugar yourself. And this lets you see exactly what's happening inside your own body and make those adjustments, in more real time, you could say. So people with diabetes and pre-diabetes have been using home glucose monitors, glucometers, for years. And they're pretty easy to use, with the small caveat that you do have to prick your finger each time to get a drop of blood to analyze in that little machine right there. And pricking a finger can be hard for people, so that can be a deal breaker, but it's definitely an option. It's inexpensive. You can buy these at any drugstore. A newer option that we find quite exciting is something called a continuous glucose monitor or a biosensor. It's a wearable device, so that little white thing on that person's arm right there is on there permanently, well, for like 2 weeks. It gives you real-time blood glucose monitoring via an app on your phone, so you don't have to prick your finger. We're big fans of doing it this way because you see the data in like really real time, and that can be very motivating, and you get a ton of knowledge about your body. And I have a quick question. How many of you out there have already tried one of these? You could just put an answer in the chat and Juliana will let us know. Juliana, just jump in whenever, once you get some responses. I'd be interested. We're going to talk a little more about those biosensors a little later.
Yeah, let's see. Don't be shy, guys.
Or if
Teresa
nobody
says
has,
not yet.
not yet, okay.
Hopefully after today, a lot of people will be motivated to try one. They're super fun, actually, and a little bit addictive.
Anne Marie says no. Adriana says yes.
Okay,
All right.
great,
And we got another that says not yet.
great. Couple health-minded individuals. Well, you're all here, so you're all health-minded, so can't say that.
All right. So now what? So if you've already figured out by listening to us so far that this is a current or potential issue for you, the question is, what can you do? Well, from a food and nutrition perspective, there are things you can do, and we're going to outline them here. So, as we said earlier, the first thing you can do is eat protein, fat, and fiber, PFF, at each meal. Now, you're going to hear PFF a lot from us today, so I'm going to apologize, sorry, but not sorry. If you walk away with one big message, this is it. Protein, healthy fats, and fiber slow down the rate at which sugar is absorbed into your system. So, this is your number one go-to strategy for helping balance your blood sugar. So every meal and snack should be a mix of PFF, and we're going to show you how to do that. So basically, PFF is your BFF. It's very corny, but it sticks. So if you have to repeat it to yourself 3 times, PFF is my BFF, go for it. But that's really our number one takeaway today, to help you see your food through this particular lens, through a blood sugar friendly lens. Now, you may be wondering, okay, what exactly is a protein? Which fats are healthy? Which foods contain fiber? Don't worry, we're going to cover this right now so that when you're looking to create your PFF meal or snack, you know exactly what to do. So we're going to start with the P in PFF, protein. What is protein? Well, protein is found in various food sources, including animal products and plants. So you can see different protein sources on the images on this slide. So first there's animal protein, which is going to be your highest source of protein. Animal proteins include foods like fish, seafood, beef, poultry, pork, lamb, things like that. Next, there are proteins that come from animals, things like eggs, milk, yogurt, and cheese, and those are great protein sources for vegetarians to load up on. Next, we have plant proteins like legumes, which include beans, chickpeas, lentils. You've got soy, tofu, and those are great protein choices for both vegetarians and for vegans. And lastly, we have protein in foods like nuts and seeds, including quinoa, which is a pseudograin. And by the way, every time we bring up nuts and seeds in this presentation, you're going to hear us say they contain the trifecta of PFF, meaning they contain all 3 in one food: protein, fat, and fiber. So nuts and seeds, if you tolerate them, if you have no allergies, are always a good choice, especially for snacking. So when you're looking to create your PFF meal, make sure you've got one or some of these choices on your plate. It doesn't matter what style of eating you prefer, if you like eating Mediterranean style, keto, paleo, vegetarian, vegan, everyone needs protein, and there are plenty of sources. All right, next in PFF is our first F, healthy fats. So generally speaking, when we think of healthy fats, we think of fats that come from whole foods and are minimally processed. So here are some examples: olives and olive oil, coconut oil, avocado and its oil, nuts and nut oils like walnut oil. Fatty fish is great, things like salmon or sardines, grass-fed butter or ghee, and animal fat like duck fat or beef tallow. And yes, believe it or not, animal fat can be healthy as long as it came from a healthy animal. And when Vibeke and I talk about a healthy animal, we mean an animal who ate what nature intended. So for example, beef tallow from cows who ate grass and were raised on a pasture eating grass instead of corn and soy, that would be a healthy animal. And by the way, don't be scared of saturated fat. So all whole foods contain a mix of different types of fats. That said, if you have a history of cardiovascular disease and your doctor has advised you to minimize saturated fat intake, then obviously follow your doctor's advice. So one category of fats to avoid for sure are trans fats. And those are in foods that contain partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated oils. So please read your ingredient labels. And if you ever see hydrogenated oils on there, put that away, pass on it. So lastly, we've got our final F in PFF, right? We've done protein, we've done healthy fats. Now we're on to fiber. So what is fiber exactly? Fiber is actually a type of complex carbohydrate, but unlike other carbs, it's indigestible. So it can't be broken down into sugar by your body. So whereas simple carbs, things like white bread and pasta, break down quickly into sugar, fiber doesn't get broken down and it actually slows the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream. Remember those semi trucks on the highway. So a few examples of high fiber foods are lentils and beans, artichokes, mushrooms, chia seeds, avocados, berries, figs, apples, sweet potatoes, and yams. Now, there are tons of whole foods that are high in fiber, and in your handout today, we provided you with a fiber cheat sheet that you can use. So we recommend you print that cheat sheet out, put it somewhere in your kitchen for a little while so you'll know what to look for when you're looking for a fiber source. So when you're creating your PFF, you've got your protein, you've got your fat, you can go to your cheat sheet to say, okay, where do I get my fiber? So now you know what PFF means, you know why you want to eat this way, and PFF is the new lens that Vibeke and I recommend looking through when constructing your meals and snacks. So let's get a little practical. What does a PFF meal look like on your plate?
Well, here are some plates, some sample PFF meals that all hit the PFF mark. And I'm just going to run through them. I don't want to make this super painful, but let's just have a quick review. Starting top left, chicken is obviously your protein, egg is protein and fat, protein in the whites and fat in the yolk. The olives are a great source of fat. And the veggies you see, it looks like green beans, beets, and maybe some snow peas. They would all cover your fiber category. In the middle on top, there's some cottage cheese, which is protein and fat, especially if you buy 2% or full fat cottage cheese. Don't buy non-fat. Doesn't taste as good anyway. Pumpkin seeds are protein and fat and fiber, the trifecta, and berries are even more fiber. On the top right there, you've got edamame beans. That's protein and fiber. Avocado contains fat and fiber. And the whole grain, it looks like maybe farro or barley, and there's some onions there. Those are all more fiber. Maybe you have a bit of olive oil dressing on there, and you've got more healthy fats. And then going to the bottom row, looks like some steak on that plate. That's your protein, likely contains some fat as well. Brussels sprouts are fiber. They're probably roasted in some healthy fat like avocado oil or olive oil. The bottom middle, egg, bacon are your protein. Avo and bacon are fat, and maybe a dressing or some more fat. The avo and leafy greens like kale are your fiber. And then lastly, we've got some poke on the bottom right. The tuna is your protein, and all those veggies and beans have fiber. Beans have protein as well. And again, a dressing, probably an olive oil dressing, would be your fat. So we'd like you to notice a few things about these plates. Number one, you can see how colorful they are. And if you've seen any of our presentations, you know that we always say eat the rainbow. And here we are again, eating the rainbow. And you can see here that PFF can be very colorful, which means you're getting a variety of nutrients. A second thing we'd like you to notice, and I've kind of been hinting at it, is that some foods cover 2 or 3 bases at once. So avocado contains protein and fiber. No, fat and fiber, sorry. Eggs contain protein and fat. Cheese contains protein and fat. Salmon contains protein and fat. And of course, our trifecta, nuts and seeds, contain protein and fat and fiber. So the more you include these kinds of foods in your diet, the easier it is to cover the PFF bases with less fuss. You might also notice that there are not a lot of starchy foods on these plates. So not a lot of grains or super starchy or sweet veggies or sugary foods like dried fruit, things like that. And one thing to keep in mind when you're composing a meal with that PFF lens on is to keep an eye on those things, on the very starchy or sugary foods. So that would be things like white rice or bread or tropical fruits, perhaps, or dried fruit, starchy veggies like potatoes. And just be sure to keep these portions small in proportion to the protein, fat, and fiber, and to not layer several of them into one meal. If you enjoy starchy foods, eating PFF doesn't mean you can never have them. It just means that you should be mindful. And if the starches start to overwhelm the PFF of the meal, that meal is more likely to spike your blood sugar. So hopefully you can see here that PFF does not involve deprivation. You can eat delicious foods and feel satiated and accomplish that PFF goal as well. So now that you've seen some PFF plates, we did say that once you leave here today, we'd like you to be able to see food and compose meals through that PFF lens. We've got a little game for you here, and we're calling it Eat This or That. So put on your PFF glasses and take a look at both of these meals. On the left, we have a salad with chicken, beans, tomatoes, and some assorted vegetables. And on the right, we have what looks like a Southwest style bowl with beans, corn, avocado, and rice. They both look really nutritious to me. Both are made with whole foods and they're full of phytonutrients, and both also contain proteins. But which would you choose for more stable blood sugar after your meal and to feel satiated for longer? We'll take that poll.
You guys should all have the poll popped up on your screen now. It looks like we're getting quite a few votes coming in. I'll give a few more seconds. And now I'm going to close the poll if you haven't gotten your vote in yet. Okay, it looks like on the left side for the salad, that got 70% of the votes, and then the right side got 30% of the votes.
Okay, excellent. Leaning toward the salad, which is the correct answer. The salad on the left has a nice balance of protein, fat, and fiber. Protein in the chicken and the beans. Beans also have fiber. And although beans can be starchy, this is balanced by their protein and fiber. Fat would be in the dressing and plenty of fiber in all those veggies and the beans, obviously. Notice there is not a lot of starch in this meal. The Southwestern salad has a nice amount of protein in the rice and beans. However, it is overpowered by the amount of starch since corn and beans and rice are all starchy foods. So we've got that layering effect. We've got 3 layers of starchy foods in one meal. On top of that, rice and corn are both grains, and grains carry a higher glycemic load, which means they create bigger blood sugar spikes, excuse me. So based on this, I'd go with a meal like the one on the left. Now, if you prefer the meal on the right, and I could see why you would, what small changes would we make to the meal on the right to make it more blood sugar friendly? Some ideas might be to swap out the rice for maybe some chopped chicken breast if you're not vegetarian. You could remove the rice and increase the avocado, so that will give you more fiber and fat. Or you could maybe add an egg or 2 on top instead of having the rice, so you're adding protein and fat. So there's ways that you can just make adjustments without entirely depriving yourself of indulging in a meal like that. All right, let's do one more. 2 more examples of very nutritious meals. Both contain whole foods and lots of phytonutrients and antioxidants and all the things we love. On the left is I'm calling it a harvest type bowl. It's got butternut squash, herbs, pumpkin seeds, some cranberries, and quinoa. And then on the right, we have a Cobb salad. It's got eggs, turkey, avocado, cheese, bacon, and tomatoes. Again, both nutritious, but which one is better for balancing your blood sugar?
The poll is now up. Oh wow, quite a few are coming in. Both these images look so yummy.
Mhm.
And nutritious. They're
Mhm.
both really nutritious.
Okay, a few more seconds and I'm gonna close the poll. Okay, the poll is now closed. And it looks like for the left, the Harvest Bowl got 43% of the votes, and the right, Cobb Salad, got 57% of the votes.
All right. Wow, that's a little closer to an even split. Interesting. Okay, well, dun 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 dun. The answer is it's the Cobb salad on the right. Why? The Harvest Bowl, again, the layering effect, layers of potentially blood sugar spiking ingredients. And the two main culprits here are the butternut squash. Yes, it's kind of starchy. And the high glycemic cranberries. Dried cranberries can be, dried fruit of any kind is kind of tends to be blood sugar spiky. The quinoa base has protein, but it's a starchier protein than, say, an animal protein. So you've got some layering of starches going on there. Looks like there are some pumpkin seeds which do have our trifecta of, protein, fat, and fiber, but it's not enough to blunt the spike from the other ingredients. So the Cobb salad on the right, on the other hand, is actually very high protein with it's got egg, it's got cheese, it's got bacon, it's got turkey, lots of fat from the avocado, the bacon, the cheese, and then fibers in the greens and the avocado and the tomatoes. This salad has no starchy veggies or grains and no high glycemic ingredients like dried cranberries. So it's not going to spike your blood sugar at all. So again, if you really wanted to eat that harvest bowl and maybe wanted to make some modifications to it to bring down that blood sugar spikiness, the glycemic impact of that bowl, what could we do? Well, we could eliminate a layer of starchy or sweet, so you could just remove the dried cranberries, or maybe cut the amount of squash in half, swap it out for some greens maybe, and or you can always add an egg on top of anything, so add an egg. So by adding protein, fat, and fiber to the dish and maybe reducing somewhat the starchy or sweet things, you can have a more blood sugar friendly version of that meal. So, and now coming back just to the short-term symptoms that I mentioned earlier, if I ate that harvest bowl on the left and I wanted to know if it spiked my blood sugar too high, symptoms I'd look for about maybe 2 to 3 hours after that meal would be if I felt kind of oddly hungry, was craving something sweet, maybe mid-afternoon if I've had it for lunch, or the need for a cup of coffee, or maybe if I felt shaky or irritable in some way. Those would be the kinds of things I'd look for 2 or 3 hours after a meal like that.
And one more thing, just from personal experience. So when I was wearing a biosensor one time, I did eat something that looked like that harvest bowl on the left, and I was shocked to watch my blood sugar climb, climb, climb because I wasn't aware the squash was starchy, the cranberries were starchy, the quinoa was starchy. I think I had a balsamic dressing, so balsamic vinegar can be a little bit sweet. And so I had no idea that there were all these layers of starch. And then when I wore the biosensor, I could see that graph climbing, and it was very interesting to know how my body was reacting. So when you see that in real time, it makes an impression.
Yeah, and I can even pile on to that. I had a salad. It was a quinoa bowl with salmon. So I had a giant, nice piece of protein on top and some nice greens. And there was quinoa in there. And even for me, this is my personal response. Like I do not do well with grains, and I know that from wearing a biosensor. But boy, that quinoa sent me high.
And yes, someone is saying, isn't quinoa more protein? I thought it was different from rice. It is different from rice, and it does contain protein, but
Mhm.
it also has a little bit of starch. Whereas something like an animal protein or maybe something like an egg or cheese, they don't carry that starch or sugar. So it's going to be less starchy, less of a blood sugar impact
Yeah.
than a different protein.
Yeah, and I would say quinoa generally it's not going to impact your blood sugar as strongly as say a white rice would. But like Randy said, it is starchy relative to other protein sources.
Right? It's still a pseudo grain.
Yes.
Okay, so that was a deep dive into how to manage your blood sugar levels through food. But food isn't the only factor when it comes to influencing blood sugar. So there are other lifestyle factors as well that can be as powerful or even more powerful than what you eat. And we're going to look at those briefly. So as you can see here, they are stress, sleep, and exercise. And we're going to explain these connections. So we often hear that stress is bad for our health, right? We all hear, oh, stress is terrible, it's terrible for your health. But let's get specific here. One way stress can wreak havoc on our health is that it can cause our blood sugar levels to increase. But how? So the short answer is that stress directly raises three hormones: adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. And those three hormones that are stress hormones also happen to be the same hormones that your body uses to raise your blood sugar back up to get you into the safe zone when your blood sugar shoots too low. So that means that the state your brain is in has a big impact on your blood sugar levels through hormone release. So we just want to be clear that this isn't a touchy-feely, stress is bad connection. It's a physiological connection. There's a hormonal connection. So the takeaway here is that the more you can reduce your stress by doing things that calm you, that could be gardening or meditating, deep breathing. It could just be listening to music that you love, spending time with friends, whatever your favorite hobby is that feels restorative and relaxing to you, the better it is for lowering your blood sugar levels. So when you're doing something that feels great that you love, if you're feeling at all guilty, just tell yourself you're lowering your blood sugar levels. Okay, so that was stress. Now let's talk about sleep. How does blood sugar affect sleep, and how does sleep affect blood sugar? Okay, first let's look at how blood sugar affects your nightly sleep. And to do that, we're going to look at this slide. So we've got two people on this slide, one at the top, one on the bottom. So person number one on top attended this presentation and ate a PFF dinner and has been eating PFF for a few weeks now. So for that reason, their blood sugar is stabilizing. It's not going up and down on that roller coaster, and it's not dropping in the middle of the night. So that's person number one on top. Person number two on the bottom actually eats a ton of nutritious foods, like those harvest bowls we saw, like the rice bowl, but most are starchy and sugary. So this person has to eat every few hours to feel good and is on that blood sugar roller coaster and probably doesn't even know it. So maybe this person finished a very starchy day with a rice bowl or sushi for dinner. And an hour or two after that rice bowl, blood sugar is climbing high. That person goes to sleep. And then a few hours into the night, because blood sugar, what goes up must come down, blood sugar drops way low below the optimal range, which causes their body to respond by raising glucose levels back into the safe zone. Well, how does it do that? Remember those stress hormones we talked about, adrenaline, cortisol? So person number two is sleeping and bam, they're hit with this rush of adrenaline and cortisol because their body is trying to get them back into the safe zone. But those stress hormones wake them up seemingly out of nowhere. Blood sugar comes back into the normal range. Phew, your body is safe. But now, person number two is staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, maybe even with anxiety or heart palpitations, which can feel really confusing because you're like, I was fine. I don't know what happened. I suddenly woke up. I can't fall back asleep. So one way to avoid this is to have balanced blood sugar throughout the day and into the evening. And how do we do that? We eat PFF at every meal and snack during the day, which will go a long way toward avoiding those crashes at night that wake you up. And by the way, in most cases, it can take as little as 4 weeks of eating PFF for your blood sugar to become stable and for you to experience all the benefits that come along with that. Now, let's look at the reverse scenario. We just saw how blood sugar can interrupt your sleep, but can your sleeping habits cause problems with your blood sugar? And the answer is yes. So let's look at what happens to two of our hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, when we're short on sleep. So leptin is our satiety hormone. It tells us we've had enough food, that it's time to stop eating. So when you've eaten, you've had enough, your body releases leptin. You say, I'm satisfied, I don't need more. So just to remember this, we picture a happy little satisfied leprechaun, L for leptin, L for leprechaun, just to help you remember. Now, ghrelin is our tummy rumbling hormone. It tells us we're hungry, it's time to eat. So to remember this, we picture ghrelin as little gremlins or goblins. They're stirring up our digestive juices, they're making our tummies growl. G for ghrelin, G for growling, G for gremlins. So leptin tells us we've had enough to eat, stop, we're satisfied. Ghrelin says, I'm hungry, eat more. So when we sleep between 4 and 5 hours per night, studies show that our ghrelin goes up and our leptin goes down. So our hunger goes up and our satiety goes down. So not only do we feel hungrier after less sleep, but our satiety signaling is totally off, causing us to eat way more than we normally would if we'd slept 7 hours or more. So now you understand how stress affects blood sugar, right? By increasing adrenaline and cortisol. You understand how sleep and blood sugar are interconnected. Now let's talk about our third lifestyle factor, exercise and blood sugar. So when it comes to exercise, we have short-term and long-term impacts. In the short term, exercise can do a lot to help lower high blood sugar because when we move, especially after we eat, our muscles use that incoming sugar for fuel. So we burn that glucose before it gets a chance to build up and get high. So that's the short term. In the long term, the best thing you can do for your blood sugar when it comes to exercise is to build muscle. And that usually looks like lifting weights. So when you build muscle, all of that muscle you carry around with you 24/7, all day, all night, is a great blood sugar manager because your muscles are burning that sugar all the time just to function. So that sugar is like their food. So the more muscle you have on your body, the more glucose you burn even at rest, even when you're asleep. Okay, so that gives you a pretty good overview. If you make some or all of these changes we've talked about so far, so eating PFF with each meal at snack, getting 7 or more hours of sleep each night, reducing your stress, exercising, let's say walking after a meal or building muscle. If you do 1 or 2 or all of those, what should you expect to feel and when should you expect to feel it? So remember all those symptoms that Vibeke talked about at the start? Well, many of them may reverse. So in 2 to 6 weeks, this is what you might expect to feel. More energy, so more even energy throughout the day, fewer crashes, less fatigue, clearer thinking, maybe less brain fog, more stable moods. A lot of people get more stable moods. Their anxiety goes down, depression goes down, they feel less irritable. For me, I can say I learned when I started doing this how to feel hungry without feeling hangry. So I used to get really irritable and shaky, but I didn't know why. And when I started eating like this, I could be like, oh, I'm hungry, but I could still function. I could concentrate. I wasn't irritable. That was like really new to me. It was actually really liberating and felt amazing. So stable moods, fewer cravings. Maybe you find yourself eating or craving less sugar. Better sleep. You may find yourself not waking up in the night as much. And a lot of people actually can experience weight loss. So that's always a popular reason to get on board with this. So those are the symptoms. Now, what about the objective data? So after doing these things for 3 to 4 months, so a little bit longer, what you might expect to see are changes in your blood work. So things like a lower hemoglobin A1C, a lower fasting insulin, lower fasting glucose, lower triglycerides. So if you decide to get on board and try these, one idea is ask your doctor for some of these labs, do it for 3 or 4 months, and then run the labs again and see what you find. See if there's some objective changes. So we hope that all of that feels motivating for you.
All right. So the next section of this talk is basically we're going to summarize a list of tips and tricks, but I'm also wanting to be mindful of people's time. It's 18 minutes after 1, and I think we want to wrap up by 1:30. So I'm gonna speed through these things. They are all in your packet, so they will be emailed to you, and there's actually more detail in the packet. So you will have the information, but I'm going to just give you a quick overview of the tips and tricks so we can get to the end and have some time for questions. Tip number 1, repeat protein, fat, and fiber at every meal and snack. Put on your PFF lens and see if you can do that. Tip number 2 has to do with those snacks. If you're going to eat, have protein, fat, and fiber for your snacks, you should be ready with protein, fat, and fiber snacks because it's hard to pick good snacks when you're hungry or you don't have a lot of time. So have things available, and you've got some images here with some things you can easily prepare at home. There's also a grab and go snack guide in your packets, some prepackaged store buyable products that are great. Tip number 3, this can actually be a game changer for a lot of people, and especially for people that are, eat sort of the normal, culturally normal breakfast. This is eat a protein forward breakfast. In our culture, it's so normal to have bagels and muffins and pastries, maybe some orange juice for breakfast. And you just set yourself up for a blood sugar fall that way with that type of food. So high protein breakfast will definitely change that game. It will get you through to lunch. You won't feel hungry mid-morning. You'll probably be more clear-headed. Here, high protein breakfast ideas. These are in your packet, so I am not going to run through this list here, other than to call out the chia pudding in the lower left-hand corner, because I know it's a favorite of Randy's. And you can make it in batches and have enough for multiple mornings, and it's delicious and it feels a little bit like dessert.
Yeah, and they can be really simple. Like you can see eggs and avocado, you can see a
Yes,
full fat yogurt and fruit, you can make a
yes.
protein drink. And if you try one thing, this might be my pick of one thing to start tomorrow morning to try. Because
Yeah.
as Rebecca said, it's a game changer.
It's a game changer, and you can literally start it tomorrow morning, no problem. Yes, it changes the game for a lot of people. Number 4, give PFF a head start. This is a timing thing. Eat your PFF first, and if you go out, you'll notice that restaurants have it exactly backwards. I mean, you can see the images on the slide. That's what shows up on your table before you've had any dinner, right? Your cocktail, your bread, and your tortilla chips. Those are all blood sugar spiking things. So on the bread and the tortilla chips, if you can skip them, great. But if you really love them and you want them, try to just hold off. Like get your food ordered, get some PFF in your system, and then eat those things because the PFF will slow down the blood sugar spike that would otherwise happen from those foods. Same thing with cocktails, they show up at the beginning. In that case, you might want to just choose a less sugary cocktail. I do love a margarita and some tortilla chips, but I don't drink margaritas anymore. I do love a ranch water, which is tequila and soda and lime juice, or a glass of wine. Those are less blood sugar spiky. So you're going to want to wait on those items. And then regarding timing, also, just eat slowly when you're at your meal. If you can slow down, it'll give your body, less sugar going in less quickly means less sugar showing up in your bloodstream that quickly.
I will say too, from wearing my monitor, I was in Europe and we had a very long meal and there was pasta and there was bread, focaccia. But because the meal went so slowly, I didn't spike. And then, of course, when you're in Europe, you're walking all the time after. So you're walking right after. It really is a factor. If you eat your dinner slowly over time, the blood sugar drip is slower.
Hmm. That's a good segue, Randy, to tip number 5. Move after your meals. We did talk about blood sugar, exercise, and blood sugar. When you exercise, does have a big impact. Your blood sugar level is the highest about 30 to 90 minutes after your meal. And this blood sugar rise is a totally natural response. And it's not a concern unless it goes too high or stays high. So just even going for a short walk after eating a meal will mitigate the blood glucose spike. It won't go as high as it would have if you stay seated. And any physical activity is helpful for your blood glucose.
And just to
Uh,
jump in, I want to remind everyone that we will be answering all the questions and comments at the end.
yes, for sure.
And the packets will be mailed out after this.
Yes. So tip number 6, get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Randy outlined what happens to your leptin and your ghrelin. So we know it's critical. And in your packets, we've included a bulleted list of, sleep hygiene tips to help you kind of move toward, if you struggle with sleep, move toward better sleep. And then our last tip, tip number 7, is give one of those glucose biosensors, give it a shot. We're showing a couple of companies here that we're familiar with that offer these to the public. You can see the links in the slide there. We're not affiliated with these companies in any way. We're just presenting info and options. We have both tried a biosensor, and I've learned an awful lot about my body and things that I probably need to stay away from, and things that are fine. On the flip side, things that surprisingly don't spike my blood sugar. And I think an important point to make about these is that you don't have to do them forever. You really just need to do them long enough to kind of see what your patterns are, see what foods spike you. You can be very intentional about your food choices while you're wearing it to test foods specifically. And if you're one of those people who likes data, you can track things and, figure a lot of stuff out. So that's it for the tips. Do you want to do another round of eat this or that, or should we go right to questions? I'm asking the audience and my co-panelists.
And just so you know about the biosensors, you clip them on. They honestly don't hurt.
Yeah,
I
they
always
don't.
think they're gonna hurt. They never hurt. And
Yeah.
they last 10 to 14 days, and then you take them off and you throw them in the garbage. So you can do one, you can do two. It's just 10 to 14 days at a time. It's not a huge commitment, and they're not very expensive anymore. They used to be.
Yeah.
Looks like everyone wants to do this or that.
Great. Okay. Let's have a little
Okay.
fun.
Let's end with our dessert challenge.
We always like to finish with dessert. So, on the left, we have a strawberry sorbet, and on the right, we have some strawberry ice cream. So, just pretend you're out for a nice dinner. It's a special occasion. You want to indulge. From a blood sugar perspective, which of these two is the better choice? The sorbet on the left or the ice cream on the right? Go.
Yes, we are very tricky. Very true, Laura. It's very tricky.
Looks like a lot are coming in right now. In a few
These
more
are
seconds,
hard.
I'll close it.
Randy, you do the next one. I took this one over. I hijacked you.
That doesn't matter.
Okay, I have closed the poll and it looks like 33% voted for the strawberry sorbet and strawberry ice cream got 67%.
Okay, very good, everybody. That's very good. And why? Because the correct answer is strawberry ice cream. And let's think this through from a PFF standpoint. The sorbet on the left is made of sugar, water, and a little bit of fruit. So there's really no PFF at all. The best we can say about it from a PFF perspective is that it has about a gram of fiber from the strawberries, and it's got a ton of sugar. The ice cream on the right also does contain sugar, but in addition to the sugar, it contains protein and fat from the milk and cream that make the ice cream. So don't get me wrong, both of these could spike your blood sugar, but likely the protein and fat in the ice cream would help blunt that spike a bit compared to the straight sugar infusion coming from the sorbet. And if you've already eaten a PFF dinner that has maybe lasted an hour or two, and you've given PFF that head start that we talked about, eating a little portion of ice cream on the right might not spike you at all.
Okay, next challenge. On the left, we have a slice of cheesecake, and on the right, we have a chocolate layer cake. And both are served with berries, and both look totally delicious. I want both of them. So, what do you think? This is also a tough one. Let's do a poll. Which is more PFF friendly, the cheesecake or the chocolate cake?
I know, Randy, they do look really good.
No.
Okay, looks like we got a majority of the votes in already. We had 89% voted for the cheesecake, while 11% voted for the chocolate layered cake.
I'm so happy you guys have your PFF glasses on. So, yes, the answer from a blood sugar perspective is the cheesecake is much less likely to spike you. And that's because it's got a lot of cheese and egg, right? So, we've got a lot of protein and fat in there. The chocolate cake has almost no protein, no fiber, maybe some fat. But that said, if you love chocolate like I do, and maybe you don't feel like the cheesecake that night, maybe you slow down and you give your PFF meal a head start, then you enjoy the cake, maybe you share it with someone, you rope someone in, maybe a few people, or maybe you plan to go for a walk right afterwards to burn off some of that sugar. So it doesn't have to involve deprivation, it's just looking at it, saying, where's my protein, where's my fat, where's my fiber, and making choices and lifestyle choices around it. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. We really hope that it's been valuable for everyone. Thanks so much for coming today. And Vibeke and I and Juliana will stay around to answer questions for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you.
again, Randy and Vibeke, for creating this informational and engaging presentation. I definitely am leaving this with so much motivation to make some changes. And let's take a look at the comments. We have some thank yous. I know we had one in the beginning that said, I'm interested in doing, I think they were talking about the biosensor, but I'm a little scared to see what I'll learn.
You know, that's always a problem, being scared to see. But the truth is, you'll just know it. You'll see what it is, and it becomes motivating when you see what's happening inside your body to make small adjustments. And it doesn't mean you can never eat that food you love again. It just means maybe when you eat it, you go for a walk after. Maybe you commit to building a little more muscle. Maybe you commit to sleeping an extra hour a night. It just gives you the power to do it in a more informed way.
Yeah. Then we have another one that says, breakfast is a tough one for me. The high protein examples are so helpful. And another one that adds on to that is that the same suggestion for breakfast and coffee? Head start with PFF before coffee, even if it's sugar-free?
Coffee. So, are you suggesting that coffee might spike your blood sugar? Is that?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
shouldn't.
it
Black
shouldn't.
coffee should not
Yeah,
because
black
there's no
coffee.
sugar in it.
Yeah, there's no sugar in it, and if you add a little cream or as long as you're not sweetening it with sugar, it won't spike you.
And I will say for people who do need a little sweet in their coffee, like me, I put a little bit of cream and then I'll use either a little bit of monk fruit or a little bit of allulose, which is a non-glycemic sweetener. So I do a little bit of that. But if you like it black or just with cream, it's not going to spike you. And that's another example of where a biosensor is so helpful because you can
Right.
drink your coffee and you see the line is flat and then you know, no problem.
Yeah, that's I learned about a lot of foods that I was actually avoiding because I thought they would be bad for my blood sugar, and then I found out they weren't bad at all. So there's the flip side.
Yeah. For me, lasagna, a beef lasagna was like that. I thought, well, it's got pasta. For sure it's going to spike me. But then because of all the meat and the cheese, the pasta wasn't enough starch to spike me. So that was a positive surprise.
Yeah. And I did hear of one experiment that was done where people were wearing biosensors and they were offering portions of white rice versus portions of banana and seeing people's different blood sugar responses to the same amount of the same glycemic load from two different types of sources. And you could have one individual who'd be spiked by the rice, but not the banana, and then another individual who was spiked by the banana, but not the rice. So it is like so weirdly individual.
And that's where the biosensor is so powerful
Yeah.
Oh,
because no one can tell you about your own body's response, you know, for sure until you put one of those on.
it's got me interested in wanting to get one as
Yeah.
well now. It looks like we don't have any more questions. We just have a lot of glowing comments saying thank you for sharing this information, and we'll keep us all close by, as well as this was really great. And I have been working with a dietitian for a couple years, but I learned a lot of new stuff here. Thank you, as well as a thank you so much. Lots of good information and some good motivation.
Great. Yay. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you
Thank you.
guys so much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, look out for that email and it'll have the packet in there with everything that we've covered.
Yes,
See you
thank you
next time.
guys.